If you're ready to make a change in your leadership and you want to go higher and further, more impact, more meaning, more value than simply carrots and sticks, simply having the transactional leadership approach where you give me, I give you, you're in for a treat. This may be the series for you. We're going to talk about the aspects of truly transformational leadership. We haven't talked about it on the show yet, and I'm super excited to uncover 4 pillars of transformational leadership on 4 episodes in this series, and really spending time with you in honing the next level of your leadership journey. If that's exciting to you, if it sounds like something that you're interested in and gaining those tools and resources, stick around to the end of this episode, because we're going to give you the resources to really have massive impact that goes beyond the day-to-day standard. Hey, here's your paycheck, here's your bonus, here's your PTO, and in a business environment, and you give me your work in a family environment. Hey, as long as you do your homework, you're going to get a reward or you won't get a punishment. Hey, there's ways to go beyond that, friend, that truly, truly give our leadership journeys and our followership journeys massive amplification. And so you think, well, what is this? What is this transformational leadership? Are they just words? And the truth is it's been around for a long time. The idea and the concept of transformational leadership has been around almost as long, if not as long, as I've been alive. In the 1970s, way back in the day, some scholars started talking about this idea of transforming leadership. A guy named James McGregor Burns, Pulitzer Prize winning author, and what a great book called Leadership, of course, of all things. And in this book, he talks a lot about politics and different politicians, people in the political sphere and their life and their journey. And he talks about these ideas of, we've been spending a lot of time in our leadership models simply transacting. There's got to be more to it. We can raise the bar by providing more ethical, more moral, foundational guidelines and ways that we can transform individual lives, transform organizational lives, and really set ourselves apart from the standard quo. And so he began developing this idea of transforming leadership, which then became transformational leadership. And then Mr. Bass, Dr. Bass, came in and created 4 of the 4 elements we're going to be talking about in these episodes. And these 4 elements, friend, are bedrock for transforming leadership or transformational leadership. We're going to talk about each one in each separate episode. And I want you to just spend time. Each episode, of course, is a week in between. Spend time this week as I uncover these aspects of this transformational leadership. Begin to implement them and watch as your leadership becomes more impactful. Watch as your leadership becomes more influential, more sustaining, less requirement for having these financial resources. Not necessarily that you don't have to do it, of course, absolutely. But here's the thing about money and other types of transactional rewards. They are contingent always upon having the resources available for them, whereas we can add to that. And again, it's not necessarily that it's either or. It's not mutually exclusive. It's an and, right? They work in conjunction. We can have transactions and we can have transformation. And in my own life as a leader, in your own life as a leader, think about people in your life who have gone beyond simply transacting with you to walking with you to help transform your life, transform your situation to something greater and better. If you've had individuals in your life like that, as I have, we're pretty fortunate. And they challenge the way we think. They challenge the way we behave. They challenge the way we build our values and elevate us to a higher sense of purpose, a higher sense of meaning. And that higher sense further elevates our ability to have our own sense of meaning, our own sense of joy, satisfaction, contribution. So you can see where the differences begin to emerge between the two ways that we influence, between simply transacting and actually transformation. And so there's great power in this idea of transforming leadership and becoming the kind of leader who people truly desire to follow. How isn't that exciting to be the kind of leader who's worthy to be followed? And so in this 4-part series, we're going to continue to uncover those aspects. We're going to start with the first one. The very first pillar or foundation I want you to think about, and we're going to uncover today, is this idea of idealized influence. It's an interesting term, idealized influence. What is ideal? Well, ideals come from the past, right? What ideals mean is that it's the past that creates a pathway to the future. That's what ideals are. So when you think about your ideals, what are you thinking about? You're thinking about your beliefs. You're thinking about your values. You think about what has developed you as a leader to have a solid foundation that you stand on when it comes to what is accepted and what is unacceptable, what's permitted, what's prohibited, what you will and will not do. And if you've listened to the show or you've watched the show at all over the course of 200 plus episodes, we've talked about the idea of values. You as a leader, me as a leader, we must have clear, well-defined, and simple values. What is truly non-negotiable for you? Is ethics, is integrity, is a moral fiber non-negotiable? Is that a core value of yours? It's a core value of mine. And so as you develop these values and beliefs, they become part of your ideals and they influence others. And then what they do is they help us as leaders to make decisions. Because once we're clear on what's valuable and important to us, then we can make decisions in real time on situations that affect us every single day in our leadership journey. They affect us as leaders and they affect our followers, and what they do is they help us to model. When we can model our journey for the follower, they can see that there's stability, that there is certainty in our step. And when we're wishy-washy, when we're unclear, when we're cloudy, that creates a lack of clarity for our followers. And here's what else it creates, a lack of trust. You see, because idealized influence, the bedrock of idealized influence is in fact trustworthiness. And if we're not clear, if we're not consistent as leaders, we will lose our trustworthiness. Well, think about it. Think about anyone who you've followed or watched. Right now, it's a political sphere, and we're in an election year. And you're thinking, wow, this person who is running for office, they've been consistent, they've said the same things continually over and over again, and they've followed through in their belief to make this change that I identify with, right? There's trust there. On the other hand, you may have seen or heard or are experiencing a political situation where the politician has said, well, I'm going to go this way, but then they go that way, and then they change and flip-flop. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes over time our ideas change about certain situations. Of course they can. We change, we learn, we grow. I'm not talking about the slow progression. I'm talking about one day the sky is blue, the next day the sky is red. We're talking about a sudden shift in the behavior, and perhaps for disingenuous reasons. Perhaps I'm speaking in this certain way because my goal is to attract this voter or this individual. And so tomorrow I may speak and I may have a completely different stance or different view for a different voter. You see, my friend, that is where we are inconsistent with our beliefs and our values, and that makes us untrustworthy. And the same thing applies in a family. Our idealized influence has to be consistent. Maybe one of our children has a situation and we treat that situation and give consequences, or we give reward in a different way than another. Now, I'm not saying that that's not applicable with certain ages and age appropriate, but I'm talking about if we are showing favoritism with one or another, or disfavoritism, and we will then begin to build a lack of trust in the culture that we are creating, and they're watching. Whether it's a child of ours, whether it's a follower in a workplace, all of them are watching to see if we are giving special treatment to any individual over another. And that will determine whether or not people see us as consistent and trustworthy. In fact, I was just having a conversation about this the other day with a relative who was asking me, if I come work for you, will I be able to get special treatment? And I said, clearly the answer, you might guess this, no special treatment for anyone. If you're a friend of mine and working for me, and all my employees or coworkers, team members, I consider them friends over time, of course. However, there's distinct lines in our roles and responsibilities. And so I said, the answer is no. I can't show one person favoritism over another, and because, say, for example, that even if it's not a relative, say, for example, I like the quality of their work more than another person, I'm not going to show them favoritism, because what that's going to do, it's going to create negativity. It's going to create a toxic environment. And people are going to say, well, all I got to do is this, this, and this, and Nate will like me more. He'll let me slide with things. If then I'm late to work, I'll say, oh, don't worry about it. Hey, you're a great employee. The other person who's late to work, I'm going to give them, I'm going to write them up, and eventually I'm going to terminate them. No. Create equitable and objective requirements for everyone in our company, everyone under our leadership, whether they're in a business or at home. All of that is based on your values. You must identify what your core values are. And if you haven't listened to how we do that in prior episodes, we'll make sure to put that in the show notes so that you can go back and work on the core values aspect of your leadership. It's essential. And so what you value is going to determine how well you perform in terms of your transforming leadership. Because what's going to happen is this: you're going to be faced with a challenge. Say, for example, you have a marketing company, and your marketing company, one of your clients says, hey, I want you to create a marketing campaign that embellishes. Maybe it just exaggerates our ability to do the kind of work that we do. And you say, oh yeah, well, this is a big client. This is a big account. This is big money. And I'm going to compromise the value of integrity that I have. What message does that send? What message does that send to your team? Well, let's all just compromise that. Versus the message that says, I'm sorry, that violates our value of ethics and integrity. We won't do that. Here's what we will do. And if your company can't stand on the merit of what it can deliver, then you need to fix that first before you come and ask us to market for you. And the same thing works in any industry. If you have a construction company, you're like, I'm going to cut the corners on some of these building materials because it'll save me money, but I'm not going to tell the customer about these subpar products. No, don't do that. If you build your business, build your leadership on ethics and integrity, on the strength of character that you have, and you'll find that will create a more succinct and more influential and more impactful journey as a leader. Sometimes you don't always get it right. I get it. I don't always get it right either. But we have to be clear and transparent on what we believe is possible and what we believe is not possible. We have an advisory division in our firm, and we spend a lot of time with business owners on strategies, tax strategies, all kinds of things. And what I tell clients all the time is, look, results are not guaranteed. They vary. It depends on the effort that you put forth to implement these strategies. We are here to support you and help you and guide you, but we have to work as a team. And so, it's not always going to be the same result for everyone, we tell people, but we tell them we will do everything we can to help move that needle forward. and stay communicating, stay clear, and work within ethical boundaries and guidelines. My friend, that is the heart of this journey when it comes to having idealized influence. What are your ideals? What are your 4 to 7 ideals, non-negotiable values that you have as a leader? What do you stand by? What are you going to let business go, let a relationship go because they violate those ideals? And here's the part of the beauty of that is the people who believe what you believe will be attracted to walk with you in those beliefs. And so when it comes to your organizational environment, for example, one of our core values as a company is to have extraordinary care. And in fact, it's this: care extraordinarily. Care extraordinarily. It's our first core value. And I was recently in an interview, and I expressed that in all job interviews with potential new hires. I go through our core values to identify, do you identify with these values? You may not be in a situation to where you've heard them stated before in this way. That's fine. But are these meaningful to you? Do you believe in them? Are you willing to adhere to them because you agree with them? And not everybody's going to agree with your core values. In fact, I have interviews where people are like, meh, I tell people we're in the love business. Some people think that's corny because people need more love, especially in accounting and advisory. I mean, it's so incredibly stressful for people. Yet, because I say that, I look for the response. Yeah, I get it. I understand. I want to buy into that. I want to take ownership of that. I believe. I want to be living in that. Great. We can talk. We can take to the next step. If that's not the case, I'm not really big on caring extraordinarily. In other words, I care more than the ordinary, the status quo. Okay, great. Well, that's fine. It's just not going to be a fit with this environment, this team. And I would say somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% of the people who I interview for different various positions in our organization are not a fit based on that idealized influence. Because here's the thing, friend. If we don't agree on the ideals, if we don't agree on the values, my influence is not going to be as effective as if we do. Your influence will only be as effective on the agreement with those ideals and those values. You think about it, back to the politicians. When a politician says, we are going to do X, Y, and Z, and you say, I agree with that, I identify with that because it's in line with my ideals. Same thing in any environment where there's a leadership opportunity in the family. We must agree as a family on our ideals, on our values, what is critically important. And if you have a spouse, start there. And if you have children, share them, get them involved with the ideals. Never too late, never too old. If they're in the home, if they're not in the home and they're older children, then invite them to share in their ideals for their generation, for their next iteration of life. And as we begin to share those ideals, as we begin to share those values, it binds us. It binds us as people. It binds us as followers. And what we do is we can take our leadership to the very next level. This is the idea of idealized influence. And so when we're talking about this, I want you to be thinking about those around you who have influenced you. Think about them. Think about those who you would walk through fire with, who you have had such an impactful learning experience with. What are their ideals? What are their values? Because you would have shared some values with them. Begin to write them down. Write down what has impacted you about their leadership and begin to codify, begin to flesh out what's important to you. And you'll find that there's patterns that'll develop. And those patterns will be part of your own idealized influence and the transforming of the norm. So then it's not just about the transactions. The transactions are important. They're important. They're necessary. People will follow you through many things for money. In other words, it's been said like this: people will fight for money, but they'll die for a cause. And really, that's what we're talking about when we're talking through this idea of ideals. These values create a cause. The cause is we want to fight for integrity. We want to fight for care. We want to fight for learning and education. We want to fight for having a consistency in our behavior that's trustworthy. These are all ideals. These are all values. For you, what is that? What does it look like to begin to build this idealized influence? Because there's great power in that. There's great power in clarity. And that power and clarity gives you a beacon for others to say, hey, join me. Join me on this very foundational piece of this journey. If you think about those in history, maybe you're like, hey, Nate, I can't really think of anyone in my own walk who has influenced me in that way, or perhaps I have and I need more. Well, think about people in history. Think about people throughout history whom you've observed, who have drawn you because of their values into the fold of their journey as leaders. For me, I think about John F. Kennedy. I think about his speech. Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. You've likely heard this phrase. And what that sends a beacon on values to me. It sends a beacon on, for me, not to live an entitled life, not to live a life with a hand out to gimme. One of my values, I want to be a contributor. I want to have massive contribution. So I want to think about what I can do for my country rather than what my country can do for me. My country has done so much already for me. Simply being the son of immigrants who have come here for more opportunity, for the potential for that American quote unquote dream for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, for freedom, for all those soldiers, all those veterans, all those who have paid the price, and some the ultimate price, many the ultimate price, so that I can have the freedom to pursue all of that. Wow, my country has done so much for me. And so I don't want to ask what my country can do for me. I want to ask what I can do for my country. It's deeply embedded in my value to not seek to be entitled, but rather seek to be empowered. And so when I'm looking at my value as a contributor, that resonates. How about you? Who resonates with you in that way? And I use the political realm because we see our politicians so often. I love Ronald Reagan's jokes, always optimistic. I'm a person of optimism. I love optimism. It's a high value of mine. I don't want to look at the pessimistic route. In fact, vision, I spent a lot of time in the vision sector. Vision, by definition, is optimistic. Nobody wants to go to a worse future state. They want to go to a better future state, more possibilities. And so I am an optimistic person by definition. That doesn't mean I don't have days where I'm down and out and I'm thinking, oh boy, overwhelmed. That's humanity, right? I'm a human being. But in the grand concept of humanity, optimism wins over pessimism. Optimism is the antidote to the dark, lonely road that leads to nowhere. I've been on that road, friend. You may have too. I want to be on the bright road to a future worth pursuing, a future worth living. And I want to surround myself with people who share in that vision, who share in those values. That's idealized influence at its finest, at its work. That's transforming leadership.